All right, so for today's class, we'll be looking in depth of how APIs work alongside with HTTP. How does these two things work together, and how will we be using it in our upcoming classes? Because we definitely be talking, this is definitely what we'll start doing, right? We'll definitely start building API, and I'm going to understand how this API work with HTTP, right? So that's basically what we will be doing in this class. And hopefully, if time is still on our side, we can do some basic configuration in preparation for our next class, right? So let's dive deep to our VS Code, right? So we don't have to be switching between slides and our VS Code, right? So we don't take our attention of the important things, right? So as usual, I'll just minimize that and go to our folder which contains all our source code, which at this point I believe all of us have that source code in our own local machines. So I'll right click this folder and then I'll open it in VS Code and just start writing some explanations and then the necessary some few codes and see how these things behave. Right. So in our first class, I think we did mention that as back-end engineers, which we will soon become fully, that our duty is basically to build APIs, right? And we say that APIs is an acronym for Application Programming Interface, right? Which basically it's like a bridge, right? That allows two softwares or two systems to do what, to communicate with one another. And I think I gave an illustration of how that is made possible in our first class. But for the benefit of those that were not in that class and for the benefit of those that did not actually watch that video, I will go ahead and explain again how this thing works in real life, right? How does this thing actually behaves in real life, right? So I think my VS Code is taking a lot of time to. Okay, so I think we are done loading. Right, so I will create a new file, still inside our directory here, right? Still inside our folder, our Git folder here, or our Git directory, or our repo, right? Our local repo, because at this point, this man lives in our local machine. So I will create a new file, and this file, I will call this file, let's call it 10. Right, I'll call this 10, and I'll call, and then 10, and then this will be understanding API, right? And understanding API http.py. All right, not http.py. I will put this as .txt, right? Because it's likely going to be a little bit of theory and a little bit of practical, but the whole point is to make sure that we get the whole point, right? So I'll change this to .txt, right? And I'll rename this to be 9 because this was what we did in our previous class. So this was our 9th, and so I'll put 9 right in front of this one, and that should go above. All right, perfect. Okay, so APIs. So we said that what that API is an acronym. Well, it stands for, right? API stands for application or programming interface, right? And outside this big grammar or this big name, application and programming interface, what exactly? Because the whole point is that what does this thing do, right? Being that it's an application programming interface, like what does it do? What interface is it doing? What exactly is it programming and the rest of those stuff? And those are like possible questions that we will likely ask. All right. So what you should know or what you should have in mind is that API is basically like a bridge, right? A bridge. So it's like a bridge that allows, right? That allows to a system to communicate, right? To communicate. Please type and forgive every typo error, right? So it's a bridge that allows two systems to communicate. So how does this work? Now let's assume that Daniel and Fidelis, right? So let's do Daniel and Fidelis. Let's assume that Daniel, right, on this end, Daniel on this end, right, has built a system, a simple blogging system, right? A blogging system, right? And basically, what this system does is to carry, let's say, football news, right? Let's assume, or let's assume that this blogging is about football updates, right? Football updates, and then each update, right? Each update in Daniel's system comes with, let's say, with the update title, right? Assuming comes with the update title, okay, and then this update type, and then also comes with, of course, the actual update content, right? And maybe it can also come with the update date, right, when this update was available, and maybe some images, right? The update images, okay, update images, okay. Basically, let's say each of the objects is ACSP, writing on my screen. Right, so let's say that each of the each one single update, right, comes like this: a single update, right, that comes into that blogging system, right. It's represented with these three categories: that the title, the content, the date, and then the images of whatever is being Mr. Daniel what is updating us about. And let's say Mr. Daniel also built this wonderful system using, let's assume the system using PHP, right? Using PHP, right? And then this system has been around for a long time, and it's doing the work, right? It's saving the people, and people are getting updates wonderfully, right? And then over the years, Mr. Fidelis now come into existence. I'm like, okay, I want to also build what a blogging system, a blogging system, for instance. And then I also want to do a focus on football updates, right? And then let's assume that Mr. Daniel Mr. Fidelis is building or have intentions of building this system with Python. Let's assume, but with Python, right? Now Mr. Daniel built his with PHP. Mr. Fidelis built his with Python. Two different programming language, similar to two different languages, right? So now what happens? What happens in this case, in this kind of situation? What happens? Now, Mr. Fidelis, let's say, have no means or have no ways of getting this update on time, right? So now what will he do? He will reach out to Mr. Daniel and be like, okay, please, can I borrow, or can I just be using your update on my own system, so that it makes a lot of sense, so that I don't have to go through the stress of doing what of going around getting what all these updates in this arrangement, so I can simply just do what use yours and do what and operate in my own system. Now, in normal thinking, right, you would think that Mr. Daniel would somehow, right, provide the keys to his database to Mr. Fidelis, right? That seems normal, right? Or that seems okay in some sense, right? In some sense. So I would, Mr. Daniel would simply, okay, fine. This update are stored in my database, right? Let's say this database is this database is called, let's say, it's called Daniel. Okay, so altogether Dan and DB database, right? And this database has some credentials like the username of the database, right? And let's say password. Let's assume that is the only word credentials of that database. So it won't be too wonderful that Mr. Dan will do what will lift these special credentials, or these secret credentials, and just randomly dash it out to Mr. Fidelis and be like, okay, go ahead, do what, get my database login and do what, and fetch this update where it's been saved and do what, and use it in your own application, right? That would not be too wonderful, because Mr. Fidelis, with the help of these credentials, can simply wipe out Mr. Daniel's entire update, or can simply log out Mr. Daniel's from his own database. He can actually log in and do what, and change the password. So many things can go wrong in this transaction, right? In that transaction, so many things can go wrong in that transaction. So what then happens? What is the way forward, or what is the solution? Please, are you guys seeing this writing, or is it too tiny? Should I increase the font? Please, are you guys seeing?
Increase the font. Increase the font. It's not
Okay.
just there. If we go to YouTube, most times it will not be that clear.
Oh, okay. Because I remember over the weekend, I think I reduced this font so I can have a special thing for viewing small things. So, all right, so I'll break this down into multiple lines, so this one can just fit it. All right, so I think that's better, right? That's visible enough, right? I believe that's visible enough. All right, so in this situation now, right? It will not be nice, or it will not be a good idea for Mr. Daniel to do what, to simply just dash out what his database credentials that has the storage of basically all his contents, right, pertaining to his system, and just hand it over to Mr. Fidelis, someone he just met online, right? It's not really a good thing, or it's not actually an ideal means of going about sharing that information. So in that case, what happened over the years? Developers came up with what we call API, right? And what we call API. So API, API, right? And then API here is more like what, like I said here, it was an interface where Mr. Daniel can do what, can basically share the content of his database without doing what, without sharing his username and password of what, or where those things are stored, right? Or where those things are stored. So that way, if Mr. Fidelis intends to use his content, right, he can simply do what, he can simply make use of this API and do what, and communicate with Mr. Daniel's content and do what, fetch it and then use it in his own system. That way, it doesn't have to do what, Mr. Fidelis or Mr. Daniel doesn't have to do what, to exchange database credentials. So basically, what he would do instead is that he will do what, he makes of API and simply do what, and simply use Daniel's Dan's content without that database credentials, right? And how does this really work, right? So how does this really work? Yeah, okay. So we know that that API is a means of Mr. Fidelis communicating with Mr. Daniel's content without Mr. Daniel sharing his password and username. But then how does it, or how do we go about doing it? Does Mr. Fidelis simply just go to his system and be like, system, please go and collect Daniel's phone? Or like, what does it do? Or what needs to be, or what needs to happen for such exchange to be made available? All right, so let's dive down a little bit. Let's dive down a little bit and see how these things work. All right, but so just so we know, before any of this communication can happen, right? We should know that this API are of different types, right? There are different kinds of APIs, right? We have open, we have open, or we could say public, public API. So if and only if, right, Mr. Daniel's APIs is open, or should I say is public, that is the only API that Mr. Fidelis can simply do what, use, right? So apart from that, there's no means Mr. Fidelis can do what, can communicate, right? And then we have a private one. Of course, this private one, of course, from a name, private, it means that you have to pass some certain level of trust, or some certain level of authentication in order to do what, to actually use this endpoint. And we have partnership API. Okay, so this one from a name, partnership. So it could be that Mr. Daniel and Mr. Fidelis are partners building on one system, right? So, but then they can do what, share this endpoint within themselves, and not any external parties. And then we have another one, composite, right? So composite here, it's more like multiple API, on more like a combination of multiple API into one response, which we'll talk about that in a bit. But then I don't think we've still answered our situation. So how will this thing work, right? How will this thing really work? All right. So in order for Mr. Fidelis to have access to this update without necessarily getting the password of Mr. Daniel's database, what Mr. Daniel needs to do is that Mr. Daniel needs to somehow use so let's put that something. So Mr. Daniel needs to somehow use a tool, right, or a library, or we say a framework, whatever Mr. Dande intend to choose, right? A tool, a library, a framework, right? That is uh that is compatible with PHP, right? Now with PHP, why must it be with PHP? Is because this system, right, is built with what? With PHP, right? This system is built with PHP. So that means you have to find a tool or a framework within the PHP domain that he can use to do what? To build URLs, right? So to build URLs. When I mean URLs are simply something like this. HTTPS colon, you could say daniel.com/API, right? So that's what this is what a URL is, right? This is what a pointer to a specific resource on the internet, right? This is what a URL is, right? So Mr. Daniel needs to do what? Needs to use any tool that is available in PHP to build URLs like this. It could be one, it could be two, it could be as many as possible. That in turn, this these URLs, okay, would do what? Would return a JSON response, or we could say structure. Right, that's basically what needs to be done. Right, that's basically what needs to be done. Now, why must this URL return a JSON response or structure? Because we established that, I think in our very first class, that a JSON structure is what is a standardized way of structuring information that needs to be exchanged between what? Two softwares. So it means that that Mr. Daniel may not actually know which language a Fidelis system is being built with, but he can be sure for certain that language can do what? Can process what? This structure. So in other words, what does he do? He will build what? He will build URLs like this, right? That should do what? That should return this update in what? In this structure, right? In a JSON structure. That's basically what Mr. Daniel needs to do. And then what does Mr. Fidelis now needs to do? Mr. Fidelis, on the other hand, needs to do what? Needs to make a request, right? Make a request, right? To those URLs, get the JSON structures, right? Remember, these URLs are what are these URLs are returning what? Are returning a. Can you guys hear me? All right. I thought someone was talking. All right. So let's continue. Right. So remember that this URL, right, is returning a JSON structure. So it means that when Mr. Fidelis make a request to those URLs, right, he's definitely getting what? Is definitely getting JSON structure. And of course, this structure, since this structure is a standardized structure that every programming language must understand. As such, Mr. Fidelis will do what? Will simply convert those structures, right? Convert those structures to his native language structure, language structure, his native language structure, and get those updates. So that's basically what Mr. Fidelis needs to do. But that's basically what Fidelis needs to do. Make a request to those URLs, and those URLs will in turn send a JSON structure, and then he can do what? Simply convert these structures to his native language structure, right? So this native language is basically what the language his system is being built with, right? It's the language his system is being built with. So in other words, it means that if Mr. Daniel hasn't made these URLs available or public, Mr. Fidelis will somehow needs to do what, go and fetch his own updates from the source, right? From directly from wherever he wants to get it. But it simply means that Mr. Daniel is not open to sharing his information, right? Now the process of this information getting from this URL to this point is API, right? Is API. All right. So are we following? Please, do we have questions before we proceed? Do we have questions before we proceed? You have question before we proceed. Question. All right, Mr. Barry, your hand is up.
Okay, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
So I'm just joining the class now. So I don't know, among these Daniel and Fidelis, like who is the user and who is the programmer? Like I don't know if you understand.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I get your question. Okay. ACSP, I think your hand is up. Please shoot your question. So let's collect all questions at once, and then we.
Okay. I just want to ask, because you were saying something about database that Mr. Daniel can share his database content with somebody else. So I'm assuming does this whole API and HTML course, does it also covers automation, like real-time automation or updates, daily, weekly update automation? Like, can we use the logic for that?
Yes, of course, we can write script that automate things. Yes, definitely we can. Yes, yeah, as far as programming goes, we can automate things, but
with
whatever
API logic and request.
Yes, with API. That if you intend to automate things over the internet, right? If you intend to fetch certain things and then automate that result and so on and so forth. But then if you do not if your automation has nothing to do with endpoint or have nothing to do with request, then there's no point of bringing it into and there's no point of bringing it down here, right? Only when there is need for it. But the key thing is that yes, you can automate things that you want to automate. Right? There's nothing that can't be automated. Right.
Okay.
All right. So then for Mr. Barry, so you're asking who is the programmer and who is the user. All right. So the thing here is that one thing you should know is that APIs is for programmers. Please, I think that's the confusion. API is for programmers. APIs are definitely for developers. They're for developers. They're for devs. Right? For devs. Right? So there is no way on planet Earth that you have a client, let's say a client that needs you to build an e-commerce site, right? And then you then tell the client, oh, that you finished the endpoint, that the client should somehow consume the API. The client will look at you first and try to wonder, what magic are you talking about? Please, APIs is for dev. So it means that Mr. Daniel here and Mr. Fidelis here are both developers, right? But happens that both of them happens to be building the same system. The difference is that Mr. Daniel somehow has a connection of getting live updates, or should I say, getting this update quickly. So Mr. Fidelis here doesn't have such ability. So as such, Mr. Daniel can share this update with Mr. Fidelis, a fellow developer, without doing what, sharing his credentials, which is what his database username and password, being that is where these contents are being saved. So he cannot share that with Mr. Fidelis, even if he's that generous enough to do what, to share this content. It doesn't really mean that he should hand over the keys to the source of his content directly to Mr. Fidelis. So what does he do? He do what, he comes up and build URLs. So this is a typical example of URLs and then this URL does was simply return a JSON structure, right? That's basically what Mr. Daniel needs to do. And what does and on the other hand, Mr. Fidelis will do what will simply make a request to those URLs, which in this case, this kind of URL. Let's assume that this is the URL that contains all those updates. So Mr. Fidelis has to do what send the request to our URL, and of course, this URL do what will definitely return what a JSON structure, and then he can do what convert those structures to what to his native language, and then use this and then use that update. So this is a typical example of how the response will look like, right? A typical example of how this kind of response will look like. So this response can come in a list like this, right? In a list, and then in this list of response, right? In this list of response can contain an object for some reason. Okay, so it can contain object like this, where one element in that list is something like this. So you can have, like, let's say update title, update and this will be like title, assuming this, and this can be title, right? And then here can be the like the actual title. So let's say here can be like update 1, right, comma, and we can have another thing, let's say content. So here can be one long content that contains all the content about that object. Let me just put something reasonable, and let's not put something random there. So update content, so it can be very long. Of course, the content is basically like the entire detail, right? And then we can have the date of which this content was released on his end, on Mr. Daniel's end, though. So, and then of course here can come in like the usual time date structure. So you can have some, excuse me, you can have something like we can have like 12 of 1201, let's say 2025, and then you can have comma let's say 9 54, let's say, okay, 45, let's say PM, assuming that can be a date. And then you can have an image, and the image here would likely be something like this. Image here will likely be something like this. So image here will come, and of course it will be definitely going to be a URL. So you won't have an actual picture there. So it's the HTTPS. So HTTPS, let's say, sorry, yeah, HTTPS colon www.dandel. So probably this is where Dandel is saving all his images. So it will just get the URL of that image, and then this will be image underscore URL dot png, right? That's that. So that's how, exactly how this thing may look like. So it will not be like this. So it's we have multiple of this data. So it's copy, paste, paste. All right. So this is basically how something like how this thing will come. Right. This is basically how these things will do. Will look like. So basically, what happens is that you get the structured form of that entire content or that entire update like this, right? So it also when Mr. Fidelis make a request to this URL, he gets this as the response or as the result of sending a request to that URL. And this is a standard JSON structure. So it means that it can be processed across all programming language. So what happens? Mr. Fidelis will somehow figure out a way of converting this man from that structure, like from a JSON structure to his standard Python structure, which in this case is what a list of dictionary, and from there he can do what he can in turn look through it and display it on its own end, right? Easy peasy. So it means that Mr. Fidelis can build a full update system, all right, without necessarily going through the stress of getting these sources, right, of getting the actual update from the source. So basically, what happens is that he can periodically send a request to that URL let's say every 15 minutes, just in case there's a new update. So the moment Mr. Daniel posts a new one on his system will automatically get that new update and new one and publish it on its own on Fidelis' end as well. And the thing keeps going like that over and over and over and over, right? That's basically what happens. So please, API is in no way for end users. Please, it's something within to devs, right? So every dev needs to understand how API works, because there may be a day where where you need to borrow someone's data. No one will come and share his database credentials for you to do what, to run hijack whatever you need to get from their database. So invariably, it means that that this endpoint will only provide information that Mr. Dande has set aside to be available for Mr. Fidelis. So if Mr. Dande chooses that only 2 or 3 updates should be available in this URL, Mr. Fidelis can only get 2 or 3 updates and nothing more, right? And nothing more. That's basically what happened, right? So with the aid of this API, right, Mr. Fidelis was sending this request. This API does what, takes data request and do what, and take it to Mr. Dandel's server, which in this case this URL, and be like, Mr. Dandel has sent this request, please process it. And then when that has finished processing, the response is what is being sent again to the same API, and then what happened? The API now takes that request and then take it to Mr. Felix and be like, this is the response from this server, from Mr. Daniel's server or from Mr. Daniel's URL. And then Mr. Felix can choose to do whatever he sees fit with that response. Are we making sense? Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right.
So as you, like, according to what you said, that API is only for devs. So does it mean that we can't build websites that end users can use, like normal website, or we will need the front end users to help us build the website, or how does it happen?
All right, so to build a wonderful website that the end user can use, of course, that is where front end comes in. Where front end can do what, can build this visual appealing website, right? And then does what, send the request. So in that case, the Fidelis here can be what, can be the front end, and we here can be what, Mr. Daniel. We have all these things available, right? So we just need someone, another dev that can come in and do what, and build a visual appealing site, and then do what, send their request to our server, and then in turn get the available update and populate it, right? So show the actual image and not this image URL. So at that point, they will take this JSON structure like this and do what, and display it in a very wonderful way, that the end users can do what, can simply use. And they can even automate it in a way that even was when the user click a button behind the scene, we do what, they send a request to a particular endpoint and then fetch some information there and display for the end user. Maybe we will try some practice and see how this thing really works, right, for both the front end and the back end guys, right? But basically, our job is to do what, is to do the job of Mr. Daniel. Question. Question. Any other question? Any other question? All right. So, having this in mind, what we should know is that API uses a specific. So let me put this down. So API, right, uses a specific communication protocol. So they use a specific communication, right? Communication protocol, right? All right. So it means that in order for your request to be passed back and forth, that request has to be in a particular communication protocol, has to follow a specific protocol, which in this case, why is it looking? Okay, so it should be, please, I want to put this, okay, maybe we can leave it there. All right, so this man uses what, he uses a specific communication protocol, which in this case is HTTP, right? It's HTTP. So this is the protocol that every API uses, HTTP, right? HTTP, which stands for, let's see, HTTP, right? So HTTP, this is the protocol that every endpoint, or should I say every API should use, right, should use, and it stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol, right? So Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It is so basically it's like the foundation for every data communication on the web. Every web, as far as web is concerned, everything works with HTTP, right? Every communication does with HTTP. Now, if you go to, let's say, to a browser like this, let's say you go to a browser like this, and in this browser, let's say in this browser you search for a domain like, let's say, a domain like VPS dime, VPS dime, right? vpsdime.com. I think that's the URL, right? So now if you click on enter, right, a communication happened, right? A communication happened. Something happened. Something happened, right? In between you and what I see right now, right? It means that what that you, as the end user or the client, you've done what you've established a communication with the server that is located away at vpsdime.com, right? So what happened? This request takes that request, right? This protocol or this communication takes that's your request, right? Which in this case is like you saying, well, fetch me whatever is available in vpsdime.com, and then take it to the server and process that request, and then the result of whatever that server has is what is being sent back to you. And this is what you do, and this is what you do, what you see. And this is what you see. So you send a request to this server. So every URL that I see is a URL for a specific resource on a specific server, right? Someone this URL is living on a particular server and can only process what a particular kind of request, and can only give a particular kind of what response. So everything is very specific on the web, right? So that's basically what HTTP does, right? So it's the basic, or it is the base for every communication on the web, and the API uses this to do what? To communicate. And how does this man work, right? So how does this man work? So basically, what it does, or what this man does, is that it defines how messages, right, are formatted and transmitted between clients, between clients, right? Between clients, which in this case is either your browser, in this case, either your browser, or it could be your app, right? It could be like your normal app like this, and the server, So that's basically what this man does. So it defines how you send the message, and of course how you will receive that message, right? That's basically what this HTTP does, right? So it's the man that actually does the controlling of how you send these things. So as such, if you are sending any request, that request have to follow a certain kind of format, and whatever response is coming from that server have to also follow a certain kind of format. So that's basically what HTTP does. And as far as HTTP goes, there are different HTTP methods, right? There are different HTTP methods. Right? Remember, this man controls how things are being sent and how things are being received, right? And then when you talk of the method of HTTP, it's basically like and what type of request, right, is being sent, right? What type of action to take on a particular resource. And we have the get method. Let me put this on upper cases. Get method. So basically, what this is more like the get method is more like you fetching information. Like what we just did here is get method, right? Now the method at which we sent this request is a get method. So it means go and fetch, right? That's basically what it means. Read the data from that server and bring it back to us. So anytime you read a data from a server, you're making a get request. So this is like a read data, or you could say get data. All right. So basically, you're not modifying anything. you're basically saying what go to this particular endpoint and bring whatever data is available there, bring it as it is. So same thing happens here when Mr. Daniel will make a request. Of course, Mr. Daniel is not making any plan of changing anything here, right? So basically, what will he do? He will make an API request that uses an HTTP method of get. So basically, do what make this request using what get method that goes to that server, which in this case this server here, and do what and fetch whatever information is available in that particular server and do what and bring it back. Now every URL has a specific method that it must accept and a specific data that it must do what return. It's not possible for you to take this request, this particular endpoint there, and make, let's say, another kind of request. Of course, you will not do what you will not get any response. Nothing will come because I am sure that on this server, this server here can only accept what a get method, right? A get kind of method, and this is the information that you will get. Right, you will not wake up tomorrow and make this same request and get something else, except the developers has made changes to what kind of information that should return when you make a get request for this kind of to this server, right? That's basically how this thing works, right? That's basically how these things work. So every request must have a method. Every request, right? Every request you are sending to a server must have a method. So one of the method there is get, right? And then another method we have again is post. So post is more like to send data, right? To send data to create something. So it doesn't really mean to create something, but then it basically means to send data. So while get reads data, post does what send it, right? So in that case, the server is not expecting to read you anything or to send you any information, but then it's expecting that you send something to that server, to that particular URL or to that particular endpoint. Right, that's basically what a post request does. It expects that any request are sending there, right, is used submitting something to that server. So because HTTP control how this thing works, HTTP will never allow you to make that request if you're not sending something, right? Because he knows that if he gets to that server, that server will demand for that data that has been sent by the client, right? So if it's not if the data is not there, then there's a problem, right? So it will come back and tell you that you've sent the wrong kind of request, that this particular endpoint is expecting that you submit something and not get something. That's basically the differences. But though we have other kinds of requests, which I will not talk about them much, probably in our future classes, if need be, we will definitely talk about them. But for this particular, since this is a beginner track, you mostly focus on get and post type of request. But then for the purpose of sharing information or knowledge sake, we have other kinds of method. We have the put method, right? The put method. So this one here is basically used to update something, right? To update something, which we'll talk about, and we'll see it when sometime maybe in a futuristic classes. I'm not sure where, but just see how it goes. We have put, we have patch. Patch on the other hand is to update too, but then you'll be updating a part of something, right? You update a part of data, right? Of data. So basically, you're not updating the whole information, just a portion of it. That's basically what we'll be doing. And we have delete, a delete kind of request, of course, from the name. You know what that means already. That this man removed the data, right? He removes data. That's basically what the delete there does. It takes something from out of, it deletes something from the server, right? It deletes something from the server. All right. So those are the different kinds of HTTP of HTTP method. Now let's see in detail how this HTTP request looks like. Because remember, every request you are making, what is being controlled by who? By this man, HTTP. right? Every communication that your API is making is controlled by HTTP, right? So your API is more like a waiter in a restaurant, right? And where you go in there and then you tell the waiter, I need let's say a bottle of water, right? Or let's say I need a specific kind of food. So what happens? The waiter goes back to the kitchen and requests, right, and makes that submission for you, and be like, oh, there's a customer out there that needs so and so meal, right? And then what happens? He comes back to give you a response. So every request comes with a response. So it goes back and come back and tell you either it is available or it's not what available, right? Depending on what kind of request you made. So let's say you ask the waiter to go and get you the menu. So at that point, you're making a get request, right? Nothing is changing. You're not doing anything, right? You're basically saying, get me whatever is available, right? However it is, bring it like that. I want to do what seed. So he goes and do what, collect the menu and bring it down to you. And what happened? And then you look through it, and then at the end of it all, you do what? You send a data back. At that point, what happened? You're making a push request because you're no longer demanding for the list of menu, but then you're submitting what you want, right? So you're sending what you want back to the server. Right? Be like, okay, go and get me a bottle of water. So what happens? He takes that data, being what, a bottle of water, down to the kitchen or down to the server, down to wherever that request needs to do what, go to, and do what, and submit it. And be like, this is the data that was sent in, right? And then what happened? He comes back again, because definitely if he will come back, right? Whatever goes, come back. Right, so you come back with either the bottle of water, or come back and tell you that what you submitted is invalid, or or probably you made a mistake in the ordering. And let's say there is you mistakenly saw a bottle of something, and then you thought, and then you assume it to be what, a bottle of water, and then you place that order like that, a bottle of water, and then it goes and come and tell that you don't have a bottle of water, that maybe you can charge something like a bottle of wine, and something like that. That's basically how the whole process works, right? That's basically how the whole process works. So this request, right? This request in the web world has to come in a specific kind of structure. So that structure has to be in 3 ways. So HTTP request structure. So every of your requests needs to come in this needs to have these 3 categories in that structure. One of them is the request line. The request line. So the request line here is more like the URL. Where are you sending this request to, right? Where are you sending this request? In this case, the URL, right? Remember, every request is sent to a URL, just like what we just illustrated here, where we went here and we type this is a URL that exists on the web. So when you type it and you click on enter, what happens? A request is sent, right? So this browser is built to do what, to send requests and get those responses. But the difference is that your browser is meant to send requests to a server that will send back not a JSON format, that will send back an HTML format. Remember, your browser is different from your app, right? Your browser is meant to read and understand HTML. That's why if you design things with HTML and then you open it in your browser, you see the design well structured, right? That's because that's how browsers are being built. They are meant to do what? To read and understand and display HTML, right? But then your application is not actually built to do what? To read HTML, right? So it's built to do what? To understand JSON structure. That is why within your app you will likely not send a request to this URL, because what you get would be what? HTML form, right? HTML standard, HTML response. So in that case, if this was an important information and VPS them see fit to do what? To share with the public, what they would have done is they would have created another endpoint, something like this, right? Where all this information is still available there, but then in a JSON structure. Are we making sense? Are we making sense? Please, are we fully? Please, I want to be sure that we are understanding. I want to be sure that we are understanding. Right. Wait, please, please unmute and ask question. Please unmute and ask question. Let's.
Please, I don't really understand this last part you explained now. Please, if you can explain again, I will do better, please.
All right. So okay. So if I heard him correctly, is he he has left us? All right. So if I heard that question correctly, like, I should re-explain the whole concept of how this API thing works, right?
Yes.
All right. So we know that API. Okay. So let me start all over and see how I can uncomplicate things and make things easier for us. Now, I know that what that API is more like what is more like an interface for what, for communicating with software, right? For an interface for communicating with software. So it means that someone that intends to use API needs to be a developer, because whatever is coming as a result of using this man is something that developers can only understand, which is a JSON structure, right? So it's basically you doing what, making a request to a specific URL and getting a response from that URL. That's basically what API is, right? Is a process, or is a method, or just call it a process, because it's more like a process, right? Please, API is a process. It's not really like a tool, right? It's a process. It's not a tool, please. It's a process. And that process of doing that thing is what we call a API, right? So it's a process of you making an HTTP request to because of course that communication has to be HTTP request, and there's no other means of communicating, right? So that process of sending HTTP requests to a particular URL and getting a response is API. Do you understand that particular point? Please confirm that you understand that point so I can proceed from there. Do we understand?
Yes,
do we all understood, right? Okay, so I'll take it that we've understood that point. That what is API is basically what.
I'll come again.
All right, I should come again.
Yes.
Okay, so let me come again. All right, so API, right? Let me put it down here, right? Is a process of sending. So basically, you do what, you send or you send. Let me put them. You send what, HTTP request, right? But then where are you sending this HTTP request to? You're sending it to what? To a URL, right? It could be any URL. Let's assume that this URL has to be what, any kind of URL, right? I'm saying that URL one makes something a URL is what is it must look like this, right? Where it must follow, it must have the protocol alongside with the domain name, right? That's basically what a URL looks like. So you sending this HTTP request to this URL, right? And then in turn getting a response. So you in turn getting a response. So you get a response from that URL. So you get a response from the URL. So you get a response from the URL. So in this case, you are getting a response. You get you're getting a response from that URL, right? So you send the HTTP request to a URL, and in turn you do what, the URL does was send back a response to you. That is what API is. Do you understand that concept? We send HTTP request to a URL, and the URL in turn does was send a response to us. Do you understand that back and forth and that to and fro communication? Do you understand that to and fro communication? We send HTTP request to a URL, and the URL in turn send a response. You understand?
Yes, understood.
All right. So let's okay, fine. Let's take it off from there again and let's proceed, right? So now Now, when we send this HTTP request to a URL and get a response from this URL, then that process is what we call API, right? So API is not really like a tool. It's not really like a tool. It's a process, right? So a process of doing something, and this something what is sending HTTP request and getting a response, which is typically this response is what is usually what is usually what a JSON standard or structure. This is mostly the response that you likely do what get, right? But then this structure, right, is what is depending on this URL, right? Now, if I make a request, and then the good thing is that our browser is what is used to do what to make this request to what to URL. So if I'm making a request, let's say I go to my browser, right, and then I put in this URL, let's say VPS dime. This is a standard URL. This is a standard URL, right, a standard URL, and then I click on enter. What happens is that your browser by default is meant to only send a get request. Then when we talk about what get request, we explain what get request is, right? Is what is only meant to what to fetch information. That's basically what your browser is meant for by default. Or your browser is meant to only do what to only carry out a get request. So it means that if you go to the tab of your browser and then you paste this URL and click on enter, you've made a request, and then you made what you made a get type of request to this endpoint, and the browser will in turn receive that information, which in this case is mostly HTML file, or yeah, it's mostly HTML syntax, right? For browsers, it's mostly HTML syntax, right? And then your browser will in turn interpret that syntax to what you are seeing here, right? So if you inspect this source code, this is what your browser is seeing. This is what your browser is seeing. This is HTML. And because your browser is also programmed to read these things and understand them and do and give the visual representation of what this thing looks like. So in other words, this thing is what you are seeing here. Hold on. This thing that you are seeing here is what you are seeing here. But then the well understood one, right? The one that the browser has read and understood that there's some design or there's some information that is within this kind of things that needs to appear in such way, right? It may look strange to you because that's because we are back end, right? It's not really our calling. But then the front end guys, this is what they do, right? They write these instructions like this, right? And then the browser reads that instruction and interprets it in this wonderful looking way, right? So basically, most of the response you get in your browser is likely going to be what HTML result like this. But then most of the response you likely get within your application, that is outside your browser, will likely be what a JSON structure. But then regardless, whatever you get, whatever you get, it doesn't really matter. But then we always hope that we get a JSON structure, because if we intend to use that response in our application will most likely go to do what to only understand a JSON structure. So in that case, if I should carry VPS dime, this URL here that I just put in here, and then copy this URL and make a request in my application to this URL here, right? I would likely to get HTML structure, which is something that we cannot work with in this case. So the URL actually, right? The URL actually determines what you get as the response. But most of the time, it's always is always a JSON structure, especially if it is a dedicated URL that is meant to give a JSON structure. That is basically what API is, right? You send your request, you get your response, right? That's basically that. And also what this request must be of 3 types, because what we are sending HTTP request behind this scene, right? Behind this scene, when you come here and paste this URL here, right? And then you click on enter, behind the scene, what you've sent an HTTP request, and that request is in 3 sections, right? That request is in 3 sections. Even if you're not seeing it. It is there. Behind the scenes, it is there. I think if you navigate to network portion, you should be able to see it. I think so. If you go to network, you should see some information. Let's just see if you can get any visible information from there. So if you go to network tab on your browser, you should be able to see some information, which at this point, nothing is, we're not getting anything at this point. We are not getting any information at this point. We're not getting anything. Nothing is coming up yet. It's the problem. We're not getting any. Okay, let's clean this up. Let's see what again we have. Right, so I think this is basically what we get. So this is the result of this. This basically what is being sent along with that request that we sent. So this thing here may look strange to you guys, but there is no problem. But basically, this is like all the information that comes with every request, with the request that you've sent. So most of the time, this request, right, or this information is being added by your browser, all right, or most of the time, this is the response that you also get, that your browser actually does what, collect all this information and do process them and understood what it has to do. So I'm looking for a portion where I can have a full detail of this man, but I'm not getting it though. I'm looking for where I could have full detail of this man. So nothing is coming through at the moment. Right, nothing is really all right. So yeah, so this basically, so if you click, I click on VPS then. So this is basically what the things that is available in this structure, in this request. So you see what that we see the request header. So these are the things that is what that lives in the header section of your request. All your requests have these things. All your requests have this information. But then the important thing that I want you to see is the method. Is the method of this request. Now remember, I said that every request must go through HTTP, and everything and certain things must be available in that request, like the HTTP method. So now this is the method that your browser will take it to the server and do and tell, okay, this is the kind of request that is being sent to you. Give me the response, and then we will take it back to whoever sent it, which in this case is in your browser, and then show the response. So the key thing is that your request, every HTTP request which you send to a URL must come in 3 sections, right? Must come in the first section of what is the request line, which in this case the URL. So without the URL, we can't even send the request because the request has nowhere else to go, right? So the URL is important. That is the first part of your request. The second part again is your headers. So your headers are more like a section that contains some information about this request, some information about this request. So the headers is basically the part that carries some information about this request, like what, like the HTTP type, which in this case like your get kind of your get method, right? Your HTTP method, right? You can carry your HTTP method. You can carry the content type, right, of this request. Basically, what headers does is that it carries additional information about a request. That's basically what stays or what should be available in the header section, right? And of course, it's an important part of a request too. It's an important part of a request, right? HTTP header, right? And then we have the request line, the header, and then the last part being optional, we have the optional part, which is what the body. Now the body is only optional. It's optional because this part is only available if you are making a certain kind of request, which in this case, if you are making a body request, a post request, right? So a post request, we'll demand what for the body section, because it's the body section that contains the data that you want to do what to send to the server, right? This data that you want to send stays in the body section of this whole request. So this is basically what makes up a full request, right? So what we just did here is that We want to come here and then we send this request, right? And then we click on enter. That request where two of these parts was available in that particular request. The request line alongside with the request header, which carries additional information about that request. And if you're using browser, you don't really need to do to worry much about this header section. You just simply do what? Go and paste the URL in your browser and you're good to go. Your browser will do what? Your browser will simply add the header part to that request and do what? And carry out that HTTP request for you. Right? That's basically what happened. But in a situation where you need to make this request from your app, you must do what? Provide these things explicitly, one after the other, right? And we will see how we can do that. We will see how we can do that. Please question on how these things work, on how API works. So the main thing is a request is sent to a URL, a response is what is received. Now that process of doing that is basically what we know as API. And because a request needs to be sent, that request must follow this request structure, right? It must carry the request line alongside with the header of that particular request. And most times the header too is optional, right? Most times the header too is optional, right? Because by default there are certain things that accompanies your request header by default, right? And most times those default things is okay to do to send a request through. Most times you have to do come back and and add some information for that particular request. So it all depends on where that request is heading to. But the key thing is that, or the most important thing is the URL of that request, right? Is the URL of that request. And also knowing that every request that you send to a URL, a response is being received, and you can do whatever you intend to do with that response. And that process of doing that is what we call API. Question before we see these things in actual practical. Right? Question. 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 All right. So the silence means there is no question. Please, I hope you guys are actually hearing me, because the way we are silent. Mr. Gabriel, I hope you understand. Is this still with us?
Yeah, I understand. Thank you so much.
All right. So now let's see how we can carry out this whole process, right, in actual coding, right? Because most of the times, okay, take for instance, let's go back to our Fidelis and Daniel illustration, right? Let's assume that Fidelis and Daniel, most of the time, you don't expect Mr. Fidelis to do what, to copy this URL, right, and go to his browser and paste it just to get this response, because by default your browser will also send this response. Whereas you don't expect Mr. Daniel to do that, right? So there should be a way of automating this whole process via programming, right? So we don't necessarily need to do what, to open our browser to paste the URL in order to do what, to get the response, because your browser is only limited to doing GET requests, right? So if at all Mr. Daniel said that in order for Mr. Daniel said that in order for Mr. Fidelis to get this information, then Mr. Fidelis need to submit his email and send his email to his server. At that point, your browser cannot help you, because you don't have when you open your browser, there is no way of pasting your email and clicking send. It's not possible, right? So your browser by default only process GET request. So in order for your browser to process a post request, then someone has to somehow build a form like this, where you can type something and click on submit. And by default, your browser does not come with that form. So as such, you still need to come back and do this programmatically, right? You need to come back and do this programmatically. Your browser is not sufficient enough to help with this task. All right. So let's see how Mr. Daniel will go about using information from. Let's see how Mr. Fidelis will go about using information from Mr. Daniel's server without Mr. Daniel sharing his database credentials. So to simulate this process, we are going to go online and we will find a free API, an open source API, someone that has built his own API and want to do what? Share it to the public. So let's go back and let's search for anyone online and then use it, right? So it's easy because there are free APIs out there. So I simply search for free APIs, right? So remember, these APIs are of different types. Remember, they are free ones. So we need the free one, right? The one that is free. The one that is free. Where is it? Where is it? API types, API types, API types. Where is it? Where are we? Where is that? I thought I had types of API here. Well, I can't find it. Well, we have different types of API. We have the public one, that's the free one. We have the private ones. So those private ones we may likely not ever see it. Like Facebook have private APIs. If you use Facebook on your browser, you see that that if you try to log in, right? If you look at closely at the bottom left of your screen, right, you will see a URL, right? Showing that this is where that request is being sent to. And that even if you copy that URL and send your request there, it will not go. It's because what that API is private, is within Facebook. So it's only used within them, right? So you cannot make your request there. Right. So we don't want that. So you want the one that is free. I can't find where I put types of API, but I'm sure it's in this note. So let's just search for it's easy. Let's smart this man. And let's search.
It's down. Go down, you see. Go down.
Sorry? Can't find it.
Are you searching for types of API? You see it there now. Open. Private.
Oh yeah. So there it is. Right. So basically, what we want is the free or public one, right? We don't want the private one, and we don't want the one that needs us to actually log in. Some API needs you to authenticate. So we don't really want that one for now. We just want something that we can just play around with and get to see how API looks like. All right. So this is basically how APIs look like. Now remember, every API, please note that every API comes with a documentation. So it's because someone else wrote that API. There's definitely a manual on how to do what, on how to use it. So I don't expect you to just pick a random endpoint and just know how to do what, use it, right? Of course, that endpoint will come with documentation. I don't think this is what I'm looking for. Right, so it says okay, so this is like a blog, right? So it's basically showing us types and top 15 free API without key. So we have this one, public API. So this is a URL. So if I open that URL, you would see that it should take us to, well, that's not working. Right, so let's open another one. Let's open fun fact. So fun fact looks like something that someone built, a student like us built, because you could see it's hosted on Heroku and it's a free URL. So it's definitely something that a student like us just built and just left it there. Maybe an endpoint for knowing some things about cats. It happens that this site is also not working. So it means that it's not valid again, and probably whoever owns that somehow forgot about it. So another one is that find something to do by getting solution from random activity. So we have another API here that you simply make a request to, and then still not working. How am I sure that these things are just are just not working on my end? It may actually be working, but happen not to working on my end. Probably let me just paste this on the comment section. Someone can just try and open it and let's see if it's opening on their end. I don't know. Sometimes things like, please, someone should just try that out and see. So let's be sure that this endpoint are working, because all of them cannot just not be working. It's not possible. All right, so let's also put again. Let's try nationality again. Let's try genderize. So this one says, please someone's gender of a person based on their name. So let's see something. So let's see again. So let's see this other one if it's working. All right, so it's not working. So it basically means it's everywhere. So this one seems to, okay. So this one is working. Fantastic. This one is working, but there is no proper documentation. But I think I can understand what is happening. So for this one, so you can say that this particular endpoint here, right, is the request is what the response is what is a the response is what the response is what the response is how do you call it? The response is a JSON structure, right? So remember, I said that the response is always dependent on the URL, right? So it means that we can work with this kind of URL, right? We can work with it because the response is what is something that our programming language can process, right? So unlike something like this other URL, we cannot process this kind of information, right? We cannot process that kind of information, so we can work with that. So basically, this is a very simple endpoint or API that basically you do what you send a request to this URL, but this time around you send the request with your name, right? And then the server will somehow predict if you are male or you are what or you are a female based on your name. A very fantastic project, right? Even if I know that the prediction is mostly based on guessing, right? I'm sure about it, right? Because to get someone by gender, sorry, to get someone gender by name would take a lot of some machine learning works for that to actually make a lot of sense. But from this, I can simply just tell that it's not working. So let's say I put in my name here. Let's see if this man works. Let's say I put in my name here. So basically, this endpoint takes in your name and your value of your name there. So if I click on enter, I should get another response. So I have so it's still processing. So I have okay, so it's still a mail. So it sounds nice. I think it's working. Okay, let me just test out someone's name here. Yeah, let's look for someone's name and just copy and paste. Let's try Barry. All right, so basically, I think that's what this endpoint. You just put your name, and then the endpoint somehow processes that, and just tells you if you're male or female. So Barry says, well, it may work. It seems as if it's actually working though, and the probability of that prediction is close to about 100%. So that's really close. Let me find another name. All right. All right, so let's try someone else's name. So I'm looking for a female name. Juliet, let's try Juliet. Right, so let's see. I think we've been getting a female. Sorry, male, all through. Let's try Juliet. So Juliet should somehow female. Right? Well, it happens to be working. It's kind of it happens to be working. So you see, so someone sat down and built this endpoint that takes your name and somehow predict your gender based on your name. So now let's assume that this is what Mr. Daniel built, a very fantastic system like this. And Mr. Fidel is now saying, okay, fine, I want to build the same system, but let's say in a mobile app and not in a web app. But then Mr. Fidel doesn't really know the logic or how to go about doing this prediction. So what happened? He may reach out to Mr. Daniel and be like, okay, is there a way I can collect name on my own end, so I look as if I'm the one that's building it, right? I'll collect the name and somehow send the name to you, and you do the prediction for me, and then I'll somehow get the result and then show to my client. So it looks as if I'm the one that built it. Well, Mr. Daniel will not just hand over his logic and be like, take my logic and then use it. No. So what he can do is that probably he can come up with an endpoint like this for Mr. Fidelis and be like, send your request to this endpoint with the name, and you get the prediction, and you can take it and do it and show on your end. Easy peasy. API manifested. Our two software can just interact without me doing going through the stress of building this ministry, right? And it's pretty simple. So let's see how we can do how the end users or how the front end guys would have consumed API, which in this case we assume that we are the front end. Remember, APIs are for dev. So at this point, let's assume that we are the front end guys, right? Let's assume that we are the front end guys. So and then Mr. Daniel or whoever built this one, right, is the back end guy, and they've built this man. Unfortunately, we don't have the documentation. But I'm sure that if I should Google this up, maybe I could see that, because these endpoints can maybe this man can have more features than just predicting your gender, right? So okay, so you can see that this is the actual URL. So I think this should have documentation where you can give us the detail of what this server can do and the available endpoint, because I'm sure this will not just be the only available endpoint. There can be multiple endpoints in that particular server. All right, so let's go to API docs. All right, so API documentation. Please remember, I said that every API, right? Every API comes with its own documentation, right? If there is no law, there is no magic that says that you can just go to any random endpoint and then just know what to do with that endpoint. It's not possible. So let's take, for instance, for this man, if I did not actually guess or just look at it logically, I would not actually know that this man is taking a parameter called name, right? This is a, don't worry about that. When we get to building our own, we understand how this thing works, right? So without the information, I will not actually know that, right? I will not actually know that. Probably I will just think that this is just the entire endpoint, right? So that's why documentation of every API is important, right? You cannot just do without it. So if you look at this, it says let's see basic usage. So the basic usage, I think this man here is just this. So predicting, so this is the basic usage, right? But then I think if you intend to go beyond that, then you somehow need to sign up and get your authorization key, and somehow use that to do some certain things. I think you can even classify someone based on content and all those stuff. So these are the things that you can actually do. Classification in a scope of specific country. So you can you mean that what that you can as well give name and country, and you, because I think maybe there's a high probability that Barry is a male in Nigeria, but also there's also a high probability that Barry can also be a female in Uganda, right? Who knows, right? So I think this API also give room for scoping, so you can actually scope the possibility of this name in a particular country. So you can see without documentation, we cannot actually know all these things, right? We cannot actually know all these things, right? So you can actually check for gender. You can check for multiple gender, right? So you mean that this man himself can even take multiple gender, right? You can take multiple gender, and then it return everything as a list like this, right? It turns everything as a list like that, right? And so on and so forth. Okay. So let's just see. Let's just try out some few of them and let's see. All right. So this is the only. So this is a very basic documentation for this particular endpoint, right? So it's good to go. It's good to go. But then there are other ones out there that you can also use. Probably you can get population data by I can get docs. Check yourself with random. So this one gives someone random doc images, right? And this one gets current IP address, and so on and so forth. This one just gives you random joke. You can even build a game that does that. I look as if it is that built it, but someone actually did build it and stuff like that. All right, so let's see how we can consume, right? Let's see how we can consume. Now we've established that API are basically what URLs that we send a request to, right? Alongside with whatever that request needs. That is what the request structures. So if that request needs some things, you send it alongside with that request, which in this case, like this request need need a get request. So that means that whatever you are sending must be a get request, right? And then if there's any other thing again that may require, you can always send it. In this case, you have to pass in a parameter, which is what name that carries the person name that you want to do to test for. And then that's basically all. And then at the end of it all, you do what you get a JSON structure like this, and you can use it and work on your ends. So let's go and let's do what, and let's write some code and let's see. All right, so I'll go back and would create a new file, and I'll call this file 1010, right? 10b rather. I'll call it 10b.py. So basically, I want this to come down, but it's somehow going up. Okay, so let me just do like this. Let me rename the probably let's just leave it there, right? 10b, right? So let's just leave it there. All right, so now let's see how we can write a request. So the good thing about Python is that Python has literally all the models for everything. right? That's the crazy part. Python has literally all the models for everything. Literally all the models for everything is available on Python. All the models for everything. So we have a model that can do that can make requests to URL, right? We have a model that can make requests to a URL. So same thing with every other programming languages. They have their own models for what for making requests. So for Python, we have a model called request, and by default, this request doesn't come with with Python installation. This is a third-party model, right? It did not come alongside Python installation, right? So if you try to import request, and this may not actually work, right? Because this man here did not come alongside with Python. Which will now lead us to discussing about third-party models, which I think we did not talk about. Did we talk about third-party models when we talk about models? This man here, did we talk about third-party models and how to get it installed?
No, sir.
Please, let someone update me. Did we talk about third-party models? So I know
No, sir. No,
what
sir.
I'm doing.
Yeah, you talked about it, but you didn't explain it very well.
All right, so
Like you
did I
just
show us
mentioned
how
it.
we can get it installed or available for you?
No. You just mentioned it.
Okay. So let's see how you can get a third-party models available for use, right? So just add it to our collection of information, right? So third-party model. I don't know who wrote this thing on my screen. I'm trying to say I can clean it, but I cannot find can't seem to find a way of cleaning it. Annotate. Let's see if you guys can clean this man. Right, so it's gone. Okay, I think. All right. All right, let's just stop annotating. All right. So third-party models. How does third-party models work? So third-party models are basically models that did not come alongside our Python installation. Third-party models. So there are models that did not come alongside our Python installation, right? Remember, for our Python installation, we don't have to do anything, right? We simply just go and do what and import. Take for instance, something like let's say import JSON, right? And just use it like that, right? We don't have to think much about it. But then in a situation where we have a model that did not come alongside it, we have to make it available in our device such that we can also do what import it as it is. So that it looks as if it came alongside with the installation. That's the whole point. To do what to make this thing available so that it looks as if it came alongside with the installation. So there are two ways of doing a third-party installation. There are two ways of doing a third-party installation. So the first way is what I will call a global kind of installation, right? So basically, a global installation is more like you simply just go to your command prompt and install it directly on your device, and it will. So global installation is more like installing it directly in where pattern, installing directly.
Yes, I don't hear anything again. Okay.
Or the second kind of installation is what I call installing with virtual environment. So in this kind of installation, right, we don't install directly in the same uh, directory where our Python itself is installed on our PC. So this time around, we create a folder. We create a folder. We create a folder. We create a folder and we install within the folder and install within the folder, right? And install within the folder. Please, I believe you guys can see, right? Right. So
Yeah,
I believe you guys can.
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, right. So there are two ways of running that installation. So the first one is global installation, where we just simply do what we said. We simply just install those third-party models directly in the same directory where we have Python. Right, very straightforward and very easy. And the other way is what is installing it within a folder, right? So that just in case, right, we mistakenly update this model, because these models are comes with update, right? I hope we all know that every model comes with updates. At some point in life, this model will get updated. And for any reason you mistakenly update your own model, right? Your own model, it may likely affect your previous project. So it's always recommended that we install for each project. You do what we install in a virtual environment, so that project alone can only use the current version of that model at that point, so that sometime in the future, if we build a new project and that model has been updated, so that the updated one will have no conflict with the previous one, so that the new project will now use that current version at that point, without the need of doing worrying about your previous product. Your previous product can continue to run on the previous version. There's no problem. But the new one can start using the current version that has been updated. That is the whole benefit of doing of installing with a virtual environment. Right? That's the benefit. But if you ask me for the easiest one, is global installation. You have no stress. Simply just go and install it straightforward, easy peasy. But then it becomes global. It means that it becomes available for all your products, right? And these things come with updates. The day you mistakenly update it, you're in trouble. Right? You're in trouble because your previous project will start misbehaving. So it's always by default. I do that by default. I rarely even do global installation. That's why you don't see this request is not even available at this point. That's why this request is not available. But I've used request several times, but I don't have this globally installed, right? So for each project, I just create it, because who knows, tomorrow they can bring in new updates where previous functions are no longer working. If I now go and run that update, I'm in trouble. It means that all my projects all the projects that I've built for the past years will start doing misbehaving. So I'll simply go one by one and start doing and start correcting them, which is, and I cannot even imagine myself being in that kind of situation. So I'll show us the two ways, and use whichever one works for you. So how do we install? We simply install using what we call a package installer. Every language has a package installer. Where were we? Every language has a package, right? Has a tool for installing packages. Every language, right? Every language have a tool for installing packages, right? Or should I say models, whatever you want to call it, packages, models, however you want to call it, right? Every language has a tool, but for Python, the tool is pip, right? I think for JavaScript or for JavaScript, the tool is npm. Another one I can't remember of other languages, but then every language has their own tool. But for Python, is pip, right? So pip is a tool. This tool comes alongside the language itself. So it means that when you install it in Python, pip is also installed, because it knows that in the future you may likely want to use external packages or external models. As such, to get it available on your device, you need pip. I need pip to be available. So what do I do? So to install any third party package, the command is pip. Remember, use pip and then install, and then the model or package _name. So this is where your model or your package name comes in, right? After the pip install, and then followed by the model or the package name. So, and then to uninstall, of course, it's is the opposite. To uninstall, we simply just do the same thing, but this time around we now change from install to uninstall. Uninstall we do what we delete that package from your device, right? So uninstall right? So this is installation, this is uninstallation, right? So you use them wisely, right? So now let's see how global installation works, right? So before now, you know that request is not available, but request is a module in the Python community that someone wrote that you can use and make HTTP request to any URL, right? To any URL. So to have this request available, you have to install it because it is a third-party module. So for global installation, what do I do? I simply go to my command prompt, right? And simply just say pip install, and then I would say pip install request in this case. So what happens is that this one here will do what, because Python is somehow can be accessed from our path. Because remember, when we install Python, we say what, add Python to path. Now, so Python will know that this is it that this command should do what, should go and do what, and fetch this model, right, and have it available on your device. Please, this process requires internet connection, right? This process requires internet connection, because what happens is that Python will do what, will go to wherever request is and do what, and fetch it and download it and install it in your device, right? So if I should do this and click enter, this will do what, this will install this thing automatically in where Python is being installed, in the same directory where Python is being installed, making this a global installation, right? So if I click on enter now, you see that should go ahead and run the installation for us. So for some reason this might is not coming up. Please let's be sure that sorry about network issues. And today it's just, I don't know, in my own country, once rain fall, the network also falls. Basically everything falls alongside with the rain. Right, so please forgive us for that, and hopefully. All right, so let's go back and let's get this sorted out. All right, so here I tried to do what, I tried to run the installation, and it says that requirement always satisfied. So if you see this, it means that I did somehow install request at some point, right? I somehow have this installed globally, but for some reason VS Code is not seeing it, right? And it happens most times, right? It happens most times that VS Code may not actually see some third party global installation, which is normal. So now, how do you solve this problem? Now, this problem has nothing to do with Python. This problem has something to do with VS Code. So now, how do you solve this problem? What you do is you simply use the command. So I'll put the command up there, right, to confirm that VS Code is using the appropriate interpreter to execute your code, because VS Code has the option of choosing whatever interpreter it likes in order to do what, to execute your Python command. So to be sure that VS Code is pointing to our global interpreter, because if it's pointing to our global interpreter, then we should be able to do what, to see request as the available third-party modules. So to check that in VS Code, we simply do Control plus Shift plus P. Please, this has nothing to do with Python. This is VS Code situation. So I'll do Control plus Shift plus P, and you should have a terminal come up. It's taking time. You should have the terminal come up. All right, this terminal come up, right? So, and then what you want to do here is to search for interpreter. So because I've used this several times, it happens to always stay here as recently used. So I use this almost all the time, because VS Code has a means of being of doing this thing. Sorry, sorry for that. VS Code has a means of switching my interpreter. Now the reason for that is because I have multiple virtual environments. So for each project, I have to somehow come back and manually switch it from that previous project down to the new project interpreter. So I keep doing that. So it may happen that what the VS Code at the moment is pointing to one project interpreter, and that project interpreter does not have request at that point, right? So you have to come here and manually do this, right? So this might not actually be the case for you, right? So if you are doing this kind of installation for the first time, then this should not really be a problem, right? I think this should just work just fine. But if you're having this kind of situation that we have installed globally, but it's telling you that, but it's still showing as if it's not actually as if there's an error in that importation, then do what? Simply do Control+Shift+P and search for interpreter. You should see Python interpreter. Click on it, and then you will see where it's pointing. So you can see that at that point, VS Code was pointing to one wrong one, right? So there are two kinds of interpreter, which is almost at the same point. We have the global, we have the recommended. So you can choose any one here and use, right? So if I choose on global, that should take us back to our global space where we have our Python installed, right? And this should somehow rectify, but it's not still rectifying. So let's switch and let's go to recommended. It shouldn't take that much. So shouldn't really take that much. So let's see. I think the previous part was global. I mean, okay, let's go back and let's see. Right. So I think that has been rectified. Let's go back and let's confirm where it is now. So it is at global, right? So it's working just fine. So you see that our request is not showing like as if it's something that we have as if it's something that we have available at the moment, right? And that is fantastic. And that is what we do, what we want. So I've used this request several times. So because this is, remember, every third-party models come with their definition, right? So you can actually go online and search for how to use the request library. There's no law that says you must know how to use a third-party model, right? There's no such law because someone wrote it. So as such, you have to go and check what is required to do what to use it, right? You have to go and check what is required to do what to actually use it. All right. So now having that resolved, let's do what? Let's make this HTTP request, or let's make the process of API. Remember, API is a process. You send, you get the response back, and you do what? And you use it. API done. All right. So let's go ahead and let's make this request. So to make this request, because remember, if I make this request, I know what I'll get a response. So I'll put a variable called response, right? It could be anything. This just a variable. Of course, that just means that whatever I'm sending now, I know what I'll get the response. And how do I make a request? It's simple. We simply just say request because the request library has a function called get. So this library has all the available methods. And this get, see what the get can actually collect. The get can take the URL, the parameter, the data, the header, cookies, flag, and all those stuff. Now these are all the things that we can add, right, as additional information to our HTTP request, right? So I'll just use the get method to do what? To make a get request. Right, so we also have the post request. That if you're making if you're making a post request, and so on and so forth. So, but in this case, we the API that we intend to use only accepts a get request, which is this URL here, right? So I will just simply send this URL, copy this URL here, and just take it to our code, right? So we can send the request to this URL because this URL, right, is giving us will definitely give us what will definitely give us a JSON response. Now, if this URL was giving us something like an HTML response, then I wouldn't bother even coming to do what to send this request from our application. I'll simply just copy this URL and go to my browser, because my browser will do the work just fine, right? But since this man will send me a JSON response as the result, then I am good to do what? I'm good to go. So now what do I need to do? Now the name here is basically any name that we want to do what test, right? So I can just make it look as if I'm the one that built the application now, Abi. So I'll just come here and just do small print or probably input. I'll just say, okay, but for now, let's just test and just see. Maybe we come back and we can make it more dynamic. So this get response, they will take in the URL. Remember, your request comes in 3 forms, right? But the most important one is what is the URL. The rest is optional because sometimes additional information is being added to the request by default, right? And since this is a GET request, we don't need the body part, right? So at the end of it, or this is the only the only most required part at this point, right? This is the only required part at this point. And then after that, I can just simply just do what I just simply just print my response. See, it's pretty simple. It's pretty simple, right? Print my response. Easy peasy, right? Easy peasy. And then at this point in time, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? I can just simply just run my code, and I should be able to get my response. Remember, this response, this will send a request to that URL, and I'll get the response. And I'll get the response. You get so this shouldn't really take much. So it's executing, and the response was sent. I mean, and what do we have? We have something that looks like this. What you are seeing there is by default, what you get by default is what is if you just print a response as it is, what you get is what is a status code. So don't worry about what status code is. It's basically a code that shows the result. Is more like a numerical result of your response, or sorry, of your request. So every code stands for something. So 200 here means that request was sent and the response was sent back successfully. That's basically what it means, right? So if you print this response as it is, this is what you get. You get the status code of that request. So in this case, how do you resolve this? How do we get the actual data and not the response and not the response? So to get the actual data, I can simply call this data, right? And then I'll just say response dot JSON. So there is a JSON, a JSON function, right? Now this JSON function is different from the one that we actually imported. Now, and this one is a function that is built into this response, right? That we can use to unpack to actually convert the JSON response that was sent to our native dictionary. So basically, what happens is that we are saying convert that JSON response that was sent to our native dictionary, because every language must have a means of processing that JSON response. So for Python, this is that means of processing that JSON response. We simply use the JSON method and do unpack it, or should I say convert it to our native dictionary, and that is that. That is basically that. So now if I should now come here and just print data, right? Print data, I'll do what I will get both the response code alongside with the data from that server, right? With data from that server. So I can come here and execute this code again one more time. So it's sending the request, and then what do I get? I get my status code. I also get the converted JSON structure, which in this case the results from the server, which in this case it has done the prediction, and this is the name that we sent, and this is the gender that has been predicted, and this is the percentage of that prediction, 99%. So you see, I can do the work has been done, right? I've been able to do to use the information from that server without the server owner doing what sharing his logic or sharing his magic for this prediction, right? So I'll be able to do to exchange or to use data between two systems without necessarily doing sharing sensitive information. Do you understand? Question. So this is basically what the front end guys. This is what they basically do. They send this request, right, using their own tools, which in this case, this is Python tools, right? But what they'll send it in their own way and do and they'll get the JSON form and they'll convert it to what they can work with, and then do whatever they intend to do with in this case. So in this case, I can just come here and do what and build out a very simple app that says gender prediction, and then deploy it. And then someone would think that, oh, I built a machine learning a system that can predict your gender based on your name, right? Not knowing that I brought the data, I brought the information from where? From genderize.io, right? So that is how API works. You send, you do what, you receive, you do, and then you do whatever you intend to do with it. So the response that was also sent back also comes in what also comes in 3 sections as well, right? They also, right? Right, so they also come in their own section, such as the response body being the data itself, alongside with the status code and whatever necessarily and whatever information that server sends back for us. Apart from that, that's basically that about API. So this is how API works, right? I can even go ahead and modify this code so it looks like one wonderful thing like that. So let's look for we can just write one simple code here. We can just say we just write a very simple code that says print, very simple code, right? That just says welcome to our gender and prediction system. Our gender prediction system based on name, right? And then what do I need to do then? After that, I will now simply just say print, an empty print, right? And then print, and then I'll say enter your name below. Enter your name below, right? And then here I will just say name should be equals to input, right? And then you enter your name, right? And then basically just input, right? Maybe I could just put something like this there, right? And then what I'll get this input there, and then turn this to my f string, and just paste that name here, right? So whatever you type, I'll just create and put there, and put your name there, and then send the request, and then at the end of it all, I'll just say print. So I won't print this one again. What I want to do now is I will just say an empty print, okay, and then another print, and then I will say processing. So look as if I'm processing something, right? And then maybe I could bring in time. So I import time. So look as if I'm doing something. So what I'll do is I will pause this man for like 2 seconds. So I'll say time .sleep. So for both of us, for those of us that have explored the time model, I believe you get what I'm saying. So this function called sleep is a function that lives in the time model in Python. Time here is a built-in Python model, and then it takes numbers, and the numbers is in seconds. So if I should say time.sleep and then I put 10, I mean pause the program, like pause whatever is after this line, put a hold on the processing for 10 seconds before doing what? Continuing, right? So in this case, I'll just say pause for 3 seconds, right? And then after that, I will just say print an empty print again, right? So I'll just put processing here, dot, and then I'll just come here and then I'll say print your gender is. Here I would say your gender is your. I'll just say your gender f string. I'll just say your gender is, in this case I'll just put so how do I get, remember here we'll actually convert that structure to our dictionary, right? So that means if I want to get the gender, I'll just simply just say data, and then in square bracket I'll get gender. Remember, right? Remember that this dictionary came with a key called gender alongside the name and all those stuff, right? So I'll just simply just get the key. Remember, we've converted this man now to our native dictionary, so we can work with it as normal dictionary, right? So I'll just get the gender, and then that is that. And then basically that is all. So I'll just run and let's see. So it said, welcome to our gender prediction system based on name. So here I'll just put, let's try Barry again. Barry. And then you could see that it should show progressing. So you see it paused for 5 seconds and then it shows that the gender is male. So now someone would think that I wrote one mad logic, but they don't know. They don't know what's going on here. That we made some borrowing, we made some APIs, right? we made some APIs, and I looked very wonderful. So that's the beauty of exchanging data, right? That's the beauty. So you can say that I've been able to use that data, or I've been able to use that server without going through the pains of writing the whole logic of predicting that man, right? I can even go ahead and add probability. So I think there was a field called probability there. So your gender is right, and I could just say probability prediction percentage. So it makes a lot of sense. So I say prediction percentage, right? Prediction percentage, and I think there was probability. I can't really remember. So what I'll do is I'll just print this man out again. So let's just print data out again. I can't really remember what was there. So I'll comment on this man out first, and we'll come back and we fix it. So let's send the request. Let's send the request again. Send the request. I'll just put Barry. Let's just try. Let's find someone else. This people is. Let's see if this guy is doing a good work. Julius. Let's do Julius. Or let's use this guy, Gabriel. I'll use this first part. Please, I cannot pronounce it, please. So I'll assume that I can pronounce it. So I'll just type it in here. So I think that's I. W-E-J. Right, so I'll copy that. Let's see how smart his system is. So we put this man here. This one here, become a female. So let's see. Well, it's showing male, right? Well, that's good. It's showing male. It's actually male though. Right? It's trying 75% prediction. That's nice. That's nice. All right. So I'll just copy this man. So this is what we want. So the probability here. So here I want to get probability, and I'll just uncomment this. So probability here will give us 0.7, right? 0.75, which doesn't really do the math, right? So what we can do is we can multiply this probability by 100, right? Remember, if I give it by 100, that should show us the actual 75 or whatever it is, right? And then here I'll just add percentage, right? Percent sign there, and that is basically that. So let's go back and let's try out everything now. That's fine. So I'll comment this man out and then run this code again. Let's try Julius. I think I saw Julius there. Julius. Okay, processing, and male, 99%. Fantastic. So you see, it makes a lot of sense. So now we've successfully built our own the same system, but then we borrowed the logic from someone else and use it. That is the whole point of API. Question. 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 So in our next class, we do what? We will not be consuming again. Keep having network issues. Can you guys hear me? Question. Question.
You said next week you'll be having something before you got up. You didn't finish it up.
I'm not sure. I didn't get you clearly. Please, can you come again?
You said next week we'll be having something. I'll be next class. We'll be having
Please,
something.
can you come again?
before you went up.
I didn't hear you clearly.
Can you hear me?
As you said that I did what?
You said next class we'll be having something, but you didn't finish it up. So
Hello.
what do you want to say?
Can anyone hear him? Because I'm not hearing him clearly. I don't know if it's from my end, which I think is from my end because network is terrible. Did anyone hear him clearly? I didn't hear him.
We heard him. We're also hearing you too. He's
Right. So
asking about what you said
okay,
concerning next class.
okay, so okay, so I was saying that next class that we will switch role. Um, when I mean switch role, we won't be consuming again like this. So basically, we will start the building of the actual API for other people to do to actually consume. So our own now is this.
The class has ended. I said again. Let's get the rest. Why am I so cold? I think maybe I'm having pneumonia or something.